Good morning. I am Ross Burland, your host, editor and analyst for FXStreet. For today's panel, we're just a couple of days away now, 3 days away from the runoff, which has been a battle between the centralist Macron and the far right and the nationalist Le Pen. Yesterday was a very lively debate, a complete battle, and today we're going to talk us through, well, by now we should all know exactly where we're placed in all of this, but I'm joined today by Yann from Swiss Bank in Europe. Good morning. Who's going to take us through the implications for the financial markets and specifically the euro crosses, and also Joseph Trevisani from WorldWideMarkets in the US. So thank you very much for joining us again, Joseph, and welcome, Yann. Straight away, Yann, I'd like to ask a question of you. What does this mean to yourself and to your country?
So actually, this election is very important because for the first time, this election has been very polarized. Like actually last year, what happened in the U.S. with Clinton and Trump, and so. This election is very important in that sense, is that we see on one side globalism, and on the other side we see more nationalism and protectionism. So we see a rise in this nationalism, globalism, because now the first thing that I can say is that the people start to defy the European Union, and they feel that something is not right at the moment. So they want to feel a relief with the European construction. So that was actually one of the biggest point yesterday at the debate. So this is like the first thing that I can say about this French election, and I could go more in depth about what happened yesterday at the debate, which I followed very carefully.
Yeah.
So because as I'm French, I will give you my input.
Who do you think came out on top?
So yesterday I was expecting Marine Le Pen to be aggressive, but in the same time that I was expecting her to defy Emmanuel Macron, and actually Emmanuel Macron came at the top. He was really good during the debate because he was calm. And he was also very precise. And Marine Le Pen, she was very expected to talk about the economic plan, because people when people are asking they are not sure about the economic program of Marine Le Pen, and they wanted to be really with that program. And actually, she totally failed on that specific point. So because she was not precise, she kept on. Let's say, aggress Emmanuel Macron, which was really not good. And this debate was very hard to follow from that specific point. So Emmanuel Macron, after 2 hours and a half of a very harsh attack from Marine Le Pen, and I have to tell you that yesterday I was following both pages. I was following Marine Le Pen pages. I was following Emmanuel Macron pages, and I was also following. So let's say kind of neutral pages. And even on Marine Le Pen's main page on Facebook, people say, wow, I feel she was really bad. She was so bad. She could not explain clearly her program. She kept on aggress Emmanuel Macron, which was really which was not good, because when she had the time to talk about her program, and it seems like when she has the time to talk, but she cannot express herself. It's like to be good, she only needs maybe to have like only a very small amount of time just to be very aggressive in it. So that was a very, very harsh debate, one of the harshest debate I've ever seen, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, she needed to be more presidential, and she was not. She was accusing Macron of still being a socialist and a socialist puppet. And she even went as far as to say that she sort of assumed that he was involved with a group of the terrorists. And she kept sort of coming back to that, and she completely For me, I think she lost a lot of points on her persona there. What do you think there, Joseph?
Well, I see you two are going to put me in a bit of a difficult position that I'm going to have to a little bit defend Marine Le Pen.
Okay.
I think there are a couple of points here, and not so much about this specific election. I think the first one we have to remember is that her father ran against Jacques Chirac 15 years ago in 2002. And he lost 82.2, I think, to 17.8. If she performs as expected in the polls, and the polls have a wide separation, so it's hard to think that Macron won't win, that she won't lose. You have to remember that in 15 years, the vote against or for the things that she supports, and if you will, even in Yann's terms, against globalism and foreign nationalism, although I would phrase it differently, has doubled in 15 years. This is not an inconsequential notice at a country at the heart of the EU. At the heart of the EU and the EMU is Germany and France, because the reason the EU exists originally was a political project to prevent another world war, another European war. That's the basis of the EU, and it's also the basis of its federal vision of a united Europe. And so you have, at the heart of the EU, essentially 40% of one of its key components saying, we don't think that the EU is serving our interests, that the EMU is serving our interests. So I think that's another way to look at this election. I mean, I don't expect Marine Le Pen to win, but the more her vote, I think, gets above 40%, especially if it gets above 45%, then you have to have, and I would hope the EU, which I think in many ways is an admirable project. I am not attempting to criticize the EU or pass judgment on it. But when you have this type of dissension in a political project like that, you need to have ways of taking it into account, of adjusting the way the EU does business so that it does not have this type of dissent. And I think this is the real, not the market issue, but this is the political and long-term socioeconomic issue with this election.
Yeah, and then there's a roundabout. Go on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to react to what Joseph just said. First of all, I was disappointed yesterday by Marine Le Pen because I was expecting myself much more than what she said, because I think she's saying on some point interesting things. For example, that some adding a bit of protectionism may be good at some point, and she did not manage to explain this clearly. For example, in French, there's a factory. What remains on the industry is now moving towards other countries, and at some point, what will only stay is that only services will remain in France. And this, I think, that was something I was expecting when Emmanuel Macron, when he was the economic minister, sold Alstom Energy to you guys, the Americans. So so actually he sold this French know-how. I think French people deserve some explanation on that. And actually she failed to ask Emmanuel Macron this explanation. So this is why I was really disappointed, because I think she failed to provide those questions. That was only my reaction to your Joseph.
Yes, I would have followed the debate, but my French is not competent anymore, so I don't think I would have been able to follow the debate. Do you think part of that, Emmanuel Macron's education and his background is through the National Civil Service School in France? He's a very brilliant, very accomplished man. This is true. He's a very accomplished debater. Marine Le Pen comes from an entirely different background. So part of it is that. But I agree with you. You know, her presentation of an idea. I can't help but draw the parallel to the American president who ran a campaign similar in its incoherence, you can say, as far as ability to express particular views at length. Donald Trump is not a debater. He is not at all accomplished at presenting the type of detailed socioeconomic, economic, bureaucratic plans that Emmanuel Macron is brilliant at. Yet he had a particular emotional resonance with a large portion of the population here in the United States, representing some of the very similar issues that Marine Le Pen represents in France. And you know that certainly points to the idea that what's going on in the industrial countries is not in one particular nation. It's part of the industrial revolution of developed nations. And she's attempting to use that, as Donald Trump did, to gain power. Interestingly enough, in the United States, Trump now has power, and he's turning out to be a centrist more than anything else, which I think most people, if they looked at his history, might have expected. Do you think, and you know much more about French politics, specifically French politics, do you think, just take an example, that if Marine Le Pen was elected, she would turn out to actually be a French nationalist and a French centrist more than her background and her father's history might predict?
So I think it's a great question, Joseph, and I will explain you why you are right. But I think partially right, because there is in the National Front two, let's say, two kind of people. Sorry for my English. You know, sometimes I lack of vocabulary. There is in the north. There is. Thank you.
Your English is much better than my French, trust me.
Thank you very much. There is Florian Philippot, who is the vice president of the National Front, and he's issued from, let's say, more leftist. He's more leftist, and there is also a National Front from the south. And actually, what I truly believe is that Marine Le Pen is not from far right. She would be more from the left. And actually, she wrote a book in 2012, and which explained that. And still, but the thing is, as she's the daughter of Jean-Marie Le Pen, and Jean-Marie Le Pen said, let's say, a very bad thing. He was very nationalist, and he said things that he should never have said. So, but I would believe, and according to a program was more on the left side, and which is very ironic, because when you see Emmanuel Macron, that people say is a socialist, but when you actually see his program is more from the right, and the truth is that Marine Le Pen is not from far right; she's from the left. Right. But still, and because initially, let's go back to the concept of far right. The concept of far right was more a concept with industrials, big company owners who were able to make, let's say, other people from outside of the country coming to work. For example, the people who own the capital were actually initially the far right, but then it moved to the nationalism concept. When you are a nationalist, you are from far right, which is actually wrong. So this is the point, and this is what I think, that if Marine Le Pen gets elected, which I don't think at the moment, with what she missed yesterday, she would adopt a left position, and Emmanuel Macron more from a right position, which is let's say an open borders position. An open borders position is liberal, and a liberal there is no such thing as social liberal. You cannot be from the left and be liberal. This is an absolute nonsense in terms of concept. So yeah, this would be my answer to you, Joseph, on this specific point.
And where do we think, guys, the majority of the population are sat then on? And obviously, with the polls, we can go by that. But there's an abstention rate of about 30%, and that's a lot of people, that will not vote. And do you think she would have swayed any of that in the debate yesterday, or probably not at all? Because they're from parties that are mostly opposed to her far right ideologies, right?
Sorry, I didn't get exactly the question. Can you just please repeat it? I'm sorry.
Okay, so there's an abstention rate of around 30%. I think a little bit lower, about 28%. So that's a lot of people that would have not otherwise have voted for her or Macron. But do you think anyone might be backing Le Pen from that rate of people that would not otherwise be voting? Because that's the only way that she's going to make up these numbers.
I could put it in. Yeah, let me put it another way. When the polling was done here in the United States before the last election, there was a certain number of percentage who basically didn't tell the truth to the pollsters. Either they said they were not going to vote, or they said they were going to vote for the Democratic Party for reasons which we can go into, but they're not really pertinent to the discussion. So there was kind of a unknown vote for Trump in a number of states that swayed the election. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there could be the same type of unwillingness to say, because of Le Pen's prior associations, the way she's often represented in the press? You almost never hear or read a story about Le Pen here in the United States without it saying far right. It always says that. Is she far right? I'm not really sure. So do you think there's a vote that is simply going to go into that voting booth and pull the lever for Le Pen, even though that's not what they're talking about now?
I think you're right. I think people are afraid to tell that they vote for Marine Le Pen because of this far right inheritance that in people's mind, when you vote for the far right, you're racist, xenophobic, you hate other people, which is in some sense some propaganda when you just think of concept of far right, when you just go much in depth and I really believe French people are not racist or whatever thing that like that. But for sure there exists probably just a small amount of people that could help her. But to say the truth, in the first round, the same amount of people were not there. Actually, she made a pretty small score regarding what she was expected. She did only 21%, and while some others said, "Wow, she's going to do 27, 30%." So I don't really believe that she's going to make the threshold to get elected. Maybe just it's like 10 points just to reach the threshold. Like if I make the parallel with Donald Trump last year, so it was very close with Hillary Clinton at the end, which is not the case right now.
Right, but I can't help but think that there's a large amount of people that truly do believe in some of these policies and don't want to become too tied to, she put it yesterday, you're voting for two women here, either myself or Merkel. If Macron gets in, essentially he's bowing down with his belly to the floor to Merkel. And and with all due respect, when I think of France, I do see a nation and people who are very, very proud. And I just wonder if we might be surprised that pride might come through. And those that are perhaps a little bit more, if I could use the word sophisticated, might be seeing further ahead that, and Martin Armstrong put it very well, Joseph, if you remember in our last panel, he basically said that the euro would have a softer landing if Le Pen were to get in than Macron, because either way, inevitably, EU have so many fundamental problems that, this is sort of almost sweeping it under the carpet, kicking the can down the road. And I don't know, has anyone got a take on that?
I think that is one of the issues, long-term issues or medium-term issues. The problems or the issues that are driving Le Pen's candidacy are not going to be addressed by Emmanuel Macron, I don't think. I don't think there's going to be any. It will take the pressure off the EU to reform, to make it a more flexible system that benefits a greater portion of the population in a number of countries, as in Spain, Portugal, Italy, and France. These are very important countries in the EU, and the pressure will be off. I mean, if you look at the approach that the EU is trying to take with the Brexit negotiations, if they take and they appear to be headed for a very hard line in the Brexit negotiations, that does not speak well of the necessary reforms for the European Monetary Union to start with, and for the European Union after that. So I think Martin's point is interesting in that it makes you think, what happens if Le Pen doesn't win, if the status quo continues? Because the status quo seems to me to be gathering in more and more resentment and unhappy people in very important countries. It's one thing, and nothing against the Greeks, but it's one thing if Greece is unhappy, because Greece is not central to the European Union. And with Goldman's help, they kind of fudged the books anyway to get in, which everyone knows. But Italy and France and Spain, but especially Italy and France, are central to the EU. And I don't think the EU can survive without taking the democratic resentments into consideration.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with what you just said, Joseph, on that there is resentment about the EU right now. And when I look at the Greek situation, actually, it's a very, very tough situation. I just read that it's the 14th times that the Greek government agreed to decrease the retirement pension, which is the amount that the Greek people will receive when they will be retired, which is very harsh. And I think the European construction is also very harsh. When I remember that Alexis Tsipras got elected, and then he promised that he will fight against austerity policies, and they made a referendum in Greece in 2015, and so the Greeks said, we don't want austerity policies, and 2 days after, Tsipras signed austerity policies, the worst that Greece had known. So unemployment is rising. I look, for example, in France, the number of companies that are closing down every week, and it's absolutely massive. And I just want to point out something, a fundamental thing. When you cannot devalue your currency to be competitive, what is happening actually? What is happening? That you need to reduce the, for example, you need to increase your retirement age. You need to decrease the retirement pension. You need to reduce also to decrease the number of public servants. You need to devalue internally. When you cannot devalue currency, you need to devalue internally, and it's what we actually see. And this explains the 40% of Marine Le Pen. And actually, Emmanuel Macron will need to deal with that, and our people will go on strike. So yeah, in France we are very, very, very good for that for the next 5 years, and then it's gonna be the same thing. No, we don't want to vote for Le Pen because she's what? She's racist and xenophobic, but it's gonna be the same thing. So yeah, I think the story goes on, and I have this impression that the European construction is going to take time. It's going to be very harsh. So it's either that way or we stop.
And both
that's
Marine
my
Le Pen,
feeling.
both Le Pen and Macron are, by political standards, very young. Marine Le Pen is she's only 48. She will be in politics for another 20 or 25 years. And Macron is only 39. So their political horizon is a generation at this point. And Marine Le Pen is not going anywhere. So, I mean, it's a very interesting proposition. I mean, there's a lot to be said. When I turn around and think of the market reaction, though, I'm not thinking that there's going to be a great deal of reaction to this. Yes, if Marine Le Pen wins, we're all going to have lots of fun in the currency markets and all the other markets.
Yeah.
But I don't expect that will happen. As we noted, both the Brexit vote and the presidential vote were very close leading into the election. And this vote is not close. You would need a huge swing.
We've got a couple of questions there, actually, Joseph, from our audience. And I'll just take Sean Keane straight away. He's asking there, what do you mean by trade? And he's asking trade stock or currencies. Please help so that I can make better decisions. I mean, essentially, either way, this will affect all markets. But Joseph, with your background as a dealer, what would your take on that be?
Well, the market, of course, has completely priced in a Macron victory. I mean, how could it do anything else? There isn't any choice in the matter. So if you got a Le Pen victory, you probably see, as you mentioned yesterday, a 5% or more fall in the euro. I don't think there'd be any question about that. I think European bourses would be hit very hard as well. Less so here in the United States. I don't know that it would have that much of a worldwide effect in both the credit and the equity markets. Less so, I think, but it certainly would in the currency market. So that's what I'd look at. I would also speculate that since it is so completely expected that Macron will win and Le Pen will lose, that we're going to get within a week or two afterwards, probably a fall in the euro as well. There isn't any more upside in the euro. Macron has won. The threat is removed, but none of the problems have gone away. Brexit is still out there. A pending Italian vote is still out there. So all of the problems behind this election are still there. So I think you would probably get, and you still have the difference between what the Fed is doing, what the ECB is doing as far as rates go.
Right.
So I would actually look for buy the rumor and sell the fact on this one if Macron wins.
How soon could that kick in? Because I agree with you. How soon could that kick in? That buy the rumor, sell the fact. Would we see an initial spike in the euro, and then on the same day, within the same hourly stick, a sell-off?
Well, the old line: give them a level or a date, but never give them both. I would actually agree with your scenario that you might likely get sort of a reactive spike in it, but it won't have much volume to it.
Right.
And at that point, almost any time after that, I would say the euro is probably ripe for a fall. Not a big fall, but a fall. Okay.
There's another question here coming from, I apologize, sir, I can't quite pronounce your name, Tokazani Malambo. Explain to us what are the possibilities with these French elections? Who is likely to win? What does it mean for either way, especially on the euro? Which other currency pair, because I think we've answered those, which other currency pair is likely to be affected by this? So apart from the euro, you've got all the euro crosses there. Are there any other currencies that could be affected by this? Yeah. The Swiss franc, for instance.
So I can talk about also what I know, what can be affected, and I would like to talk about the euro Swiss franc, which it's always a very very nice to look at this currency. It's like everyone knows, it's a safe haven currency. And what we could see over the last just few weeks before the first round of the French election is that we could see that the euro Swiss franc went from 106 to 108, and it's really like a currency that I follow carefully, because I think that the Swiss National Bank was defending the Swiss franc against a risk-off move, and right now that I believe that the Macron victory is priced in. Until yesterday, before the debate, it was still unclear. It was okay. Macron had still the lead, but now it's, in my opinion, it's a done deal. I like 98% is a done deal. So I think that the Euro Swiss franc is going to get back to below 107, 106. Because the central bank is going to start to intervene, and the SNB action was only to get some figures before risk of move and to get some margin. So because people regarding the Swiss National Bank, and if they want to trade this currency, they're only reacting to market news. So they were just anticipating, reacting, but they cannot play the game because they are way too small.
And do you
they
think
cannot lead the game?
In regards to the SNB, can they be a little bit more lax though, because of the inflation is not as much as a concern at the moment? Is that right? Could they afford to be a little bit more lax? Go on.
Right now, what we could see regarding the fundamental is that everyone was expecting the difficulties from Switzerland, from the Swiss country, and actually it's not the case. Okay, inflation is still very low, but we could see other fundamental data that printed better, like personal consumption and retail sales were better than expected, and actually the Switzerland is actually not having as many difficulties as we were thinking regarding the strength of the Swiss franc. But we should see. We need to see that in the longer run. At the moment, I think it's still all right here. I could say.
Okay, and in terms of levels, Joseph, in the euro, do you have any levels in mind? How low, for instance, if Macron were to come in and there were shifts towards central bank policies again, how low do you think the euro could come back?
I mean,
so for the
or either
no, Yann, go.
Oh,
go on, Yann.
So I'm doing the Euro Swiss. I have some levels. Right now there is a strong support at 106.23. That it's a support that I am a firm believer that the Euro Swiss can go below 106. Okay, maybe a bit too radical on that one, but I'm really monitoring the support at 106.23. It's like it's a 3 months low, something like that. So yeah, it's a support that I would advise our follower just also to follow. So
okay, and what about euro dollar, guys?
Well, I think after the election, once this threat is dissipated, the euro heads down. I think there isn't a lot that's going to change. If Macron wants, the last thing Macron is going to want for the French economy, also for the Italian economy, is any sense of tightening or pending change in policy from the ECB. I don't think that the ECB policy of providing liquidity and extra low interest rates has been terribly effective. But I also think that given the current situation, a change in policy would only lead to probably a worse result. That would mean if the ECB says, well, we're now going to start raising rates as they're doing in the United States for whatever reason, there's a recession coming, whatever you want to say, that would have a detrimental effect. So I think on balance, and you add in what appears to be a very difficult negotiation with Britain, that the balance is shifting to a negative position for the euro. And in that point, it heads back to 105. And I don't know if we'll start. And if the situation with Britain becomes, because that's the main topic on the burner right now, unless the Italians vote, then parity becomes a possibility if it goes through the old lows in the high 104s.
Fantastic. Okay. We've got a question coming in from Mark, which is a good question. He's asking about sterling. So Please, some word about sterling after the election result.
Well, sterling is going to be in the same boat that the euro is in. The one thing about the sterling, though, is it has fallen, even though it's been almost a year since the vote in Britain. The fall has been so dramatic and so complete for the sterling that I think there's less downside risk there, even though there is a potential for a great deal of trials and tribulations involving the Brexit negotiations. Another thing I think is true about the Brexit negotiations, it is so obviously in the benefit of both parties to come to a reasonable agreement on this issue that I think it's going to take a lot of very acrimonious language and positioning to convince the markets that the stance that the European Union is taking is anything more than negotiation pose. So it's going to take a lot, I think, to convince the markets that they won't come to an agreement, because the markets desperately want to believe that that the trade and other issues are going to be worked out. So I think both of those things will tend to limit the downside of the sterling, even though you're going to get a lot of hot air over this negotiation, I think.
And is that either or, Le Pen winning or Macron? You're bullish on sterling either way?
I think if Le Pen wins, I think the sterling is probably going to go up.
Yeah.
Because the emotional reaction will be that Britain is going to be in a much stronger position vis-a-vis negotiations with the EU if the EU itself is riven by dissension.
Yeah.
From a market point of view, from a volatility point of view, the Le Pen victory would be much more interesting. I'm not making a judgment politically, but just from a market point of view, it would prompt a great deal more volatility.
Absolutely. It'd be fireworks, would it not?
Fireworks, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. Any points there from you, Yann?
Yes, especially on the pound. We have seen very recently, just to talk about the pound and the effect of the French election. But first, we have seen that the pound just got weaker against the US dollar, because everyone was expecting the fiscal reform. So actually, we could see that. But right now, what is certain, and what I really believe, is that UK is benefiting from a very weak currency, and it will benefit to them in the medium run. And other things I would like also to point out is that we believe that people in general believe that if they get out of the European Union, it's over. They get closed. They get closed out. How do you say that? They will be only alone on themselves. But I want to give an example. In France, there exist around 6,600 bilateral treaties, and just the European Union treaties is only one of them. So actually, if you remove one, you're not alone. And actually, UK is not alone. There are only many other treaties, which is why I think that the pound is largely undervalued. And as Joseph just mentioned, I think it's a deal. Right now, I really believe it's a deal. It's a deal. Me, I long pound right now.
Extra long. And guys, we're coming towards the end. I just want to highlight, I think we touched on it earlier. Again, with Macron coming in and winning this is not game over for Europe. And maybe, has anyone got any insights into Italy and the sort of concerns, the threats that Italy actually has for the euro and the euro project?
One thing, I'm going to, you have to talk to me in August. I'm going to go to Italy for a couple of weeks in the summer with my family to visit my family in Italy.
Right.
So I'll get a better insight as to what's going on there. But I mean, Italy's position as far as currency goes, I think is a little different. the Italian lira was periodic. One of their methods of coping in Italy with and maintaining their efficiency and profitability was to periodically devalue the euro. To devalue the lira when they had the lira. France, not so much. So I think Italy probably has more business resentment against the euro than is common in France. Right. So for that reason, I think the vote against or the feeling against the euro in Italy may be wider spread in the country across different socioeconomic classes. In other words, the business leaders in Italy may also have some serious issues with the euro, which may not be true in France. Right. But for a better point on that, I would ask Yann, since he has more familiarity with that than I do.
Yeah, I have some more familiarity with Italy, especially since I got also an Italian degree. So yeah, we remember last December for the new constitution got rejected by the Italian people. Right. But from my understanding, it's still this resentment against the euro. It's still very limited. And I would say Renzi's party, it's still leading. I would say so. So the resentment, the global resentment against the euro currency is still very limited even there. I don't see. We are not in the case like we've seen in Greece with the Obdore party. I don't know how to say in English this name of this very, very far right, because they are so for this specific case it was really like a far right party. So we don't see that in Italy at the moment. So but even if Italian retirement age just got increased, people are still. I think it's still okay there for the European construction. I think that it's still, if there is really something, it's going to come from Greece. If there is like a much deeper issue, it's going to come from Greece. So that's my thought on that. So.
Okay.
You know, the 5-star movement in there's a lot of questions about whether the 5-star movement, Beppe Grillo's movement party in Italy, can actually govern or could even find someone competent to run for a national office. Nevertheless, one of its ideas, I don't know if I'd call it a platform, they're claiming they're not a political party. There's some sort of a web-based creation. But one of their ideas is, if not rigorously anti-euro, it is very highly questioning of the euro's benefits for Italy and for the Italian economy. And that constitutional rejection that Yann mentioned, from this side of the Atlantic, looks very much like a protest vote against the way things are being run, both economically and politically in Italy, more than any specific rejection to the terms or whatever what the constitutional amendment was. It has a lot more in common, I would say, than with the vote for Donald Trump in the United States and with the vote for Marine Le Pen, in that people are highly dissatisfied with the economic status quo in Italy.
Yeah,
I would like.
Go on.
Sorry, Ross. I would like just to add something on the European Union, and actually we see many parties in Europe. It can be in Spain, it can be in France, it can be in Italy, it can be in Greece, it can be wherever you want, and they all promise it. We need to negotiate treaties with the European Union. They all say that. Actually, it's because it's clear that there is actually something wrong in this European construction. So this European construction is tough for people, let's say. But the truth is that there is an article. It's called the article number 48 of the European Union, and you cannot renegotiate treaties or every other members of the European Union need to agree with you. If they disagree with you, you cannot renegotiate anything, which is actually, let's say, so parties that say, oh, we are going to renegotiate, we are going to, so you cannot actually define your immigration policy, your fiscal policy. You cannot, with the European Union, it's going to be easy. It is actually very, very tough to, so this is also something to be aware of. And in France, from what I know the best, it was in 2012, François Hollande wanted to renegotiate treaties. Nothing has been done. Maybe he went to see Angela Merkel, and maybe she said no, and that was it. So, yeah, that's a very important point.
Yeah, and in terms of
the
reason why I brought up Italy, because from what I've read, and I've not been to Italy for many years since I last had a girlfriend in Italy, but from my understanding, I thought that Italy was actually going to be one of the biggest challenge. I mean, apart from Brexit and Greece, to the euro. I mean, unlike Britain, Italy was one of the 6 founding members of the EU, but attitudes, I thought, had changed profoundly. In response to the country's long economic stagnation and the euro crisis and fears over illegal migration. So, and also, not to forget, I mean, Italy has actually lost over 25% of its industrial production since the financial crash of 2008, and a lot of that is to be blamed on the euro. So I don't know. So what was? Just remind me there of what you were saying, but while you're positive about Italy, in fact.
Oh, I'm not exactly positive on Italy, but what I say is that just factual political parties do not want to exit the European Union. They just said that they are trying to renegotiate things, and when there is not a proper agenda on exiting, it's not going to be possible. So what we could see from that specific point, we see the retirement age increasing. We see other public aid decreasing as well. We see many things like that. But right now, I cannot see a global movement except the UK. But the UK did not have the euro, So the currency is really at the center stage of that. So I really do not see a big movement of countries wanting to exit. I can see some issues, but they all say all political parties, we want another Europe. So the European construction will still be at stake in 2 years' time, but for the time, because of retirement age, because of public aid, because of less civil servants, but for the time being, we just keep going. Okay.
And guys, I've got two excellent last questions. Joseph, do you want to say anything there?
I was just going to say that a number, and Yann's absolutely right, all these political parties who are looking to gain power in Europe are saying we need to renegotiate the EU treaties. And the simple question is, renegotiate with whom? Right. There is no, who are you going to renegotiate with? The Brussels bureaucracy? No, Yann's right. You'd have to get all 27 other nations to agree to your changes. That's an impossible task.
Right. Okay. Right. So let's wrap up. I've got three last questions to go through, and they're all good. Okay, Mr. Noel, NOH, it's going to be just a short-term fluctuation or a long-term breakaway? He's in respect to the currency movements on these elections.
I would say it's a short-term movement because the basic economic and political facts are still there. And this election apparently is not going to change. It seems that it's not going to change them. The Europe's economic issues are not going to go away. Its immigration issues are not going to go away. The ECB's position on interest rates vis-a-vis the U.S. Federal Reserve is not going to change. Those, I think, are going to continue to determine the long-term trends.
And his question also there, could we be expecting a 300 pip plus movement as happened during the US election and Brexit? And I think we mentioned there, I mean, if Le Pen were to win, we're looking at about a 5% drop in the euro and the potential sort of sell the fat scenario if Macron comes in, an initial spike and perhaps selling in and fading that trade. Is that, what do you reckon there, Yann, correct?
I think it's absolutely right. There's going to be some deep move if Marine Le Pen gets elected, which actually I don't believe regarding the polls. Even if we know that polls may be very let's say that they can get wrong. But if Macron gets elected, and as Joseph mentioned just at the very beginning of this webinar, it's I think it's not going to move much. It's going to move very marginally. So it's a short-term fluctuation. It's also my belief.
And guys, go on, Joseph.
If you get a reaction, if you get sort of the buy the rumor, sell the fact reaction to a Macron win, it's essentially a technical move.
Right.
It's not really a change. It's not a change in the underlying fundamentals, the underlying direction of anything.
Okay. And then a final question to wrap this up. Who will be the best friend of France in a scenario if Le Pen were to win or Macron? So who would be France's best friend if Le Pen was president or if Macron was president?
So I think I can answer that. If Macron gets president, so his best friend is going to be Angela Merkel. So this is actually absolutely clear. He doesn't want, this is absolutely very factual. He doesn't want to renegotiate anything. Anyway, he knows that it's not possible. And and I also want to mention something, and then I will tell about Marine Le Pen's best friend. Emmanuel Macron's program is contained in a document that is named. I'm going to give you the name. It's the broad economic policy guideline issued everywhere by the European Union, and so it is going to apply this program. So the French president right now cannot define his political program. This is why I tell that Angela Merkel is going to be Macron's best friend. And regarding Marine Le Pen, for sure it's not going to be Angela Merkel, because she's going to be she's very suspicious regarding the European Union's future. But in some points, and everyone knows that France used to be very close with Russia a century ago. Actually, let's say very highly educated Russian people used to speak French between themselves. So historically, France and Russia are very close, and I believe that maybe Putin's will be Marine Le Pen best friend. And it's also what we were thinking regarding Trump before. Oh yes, Trump and Putin are going to be best friend, but it's not the case. So yeah.
Well, and Britain as well, of course, if Le Pen were to get in, I'm sure Farage and Le Pen will be having many dinners together. Joseph, do you have anything to it?
I would disagree with Yann in one case. I would agree with Angela Merkel, of course, because they're both Macron and Merkel are politicians of the European Union. And they believe very strongly in not only the current state of the union, but also in the ever closer union that they don't talk about much anymore, but that's still the path that they're on. However, I think that if Le Pen won, she would quickly develop an affection and an interest for Theresa May in Britain, because they would both be in a similar position with what they want to accomplish with the European Union. And I think that alliance would be useful to both if Le Pen happened to win.
Yep, agreed. I think there'd be a lot of red wine flowing in Britain, wouldn't there?
And after all, the English upper classes at one point, 1,000 years ago, spoke French as well.
Yeah, correct. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. Does anyone else have anything there to add? I don't think we've got any more questions to go through. Oh, no, yes, we do. Let's go for this. We're on a roll, so why not? What would be the effect of Le Pen win versus Macron win in terms of working together with the USA fighting terrorism in Syria, the Middle East? Who will work better with the USA, Macron or Le Pen?
That's an interesting question.
That is a good one. Thank you, Sean.
So it's a very interesting question. It can be tough to answer that question because it goes into geopolitics, and some people believe that there is the Daesh, this Islamic State, is financed by the Saudi Arabia, that is also supported by Western countries. So is it going to continue? I lack of, let's say, factual element just to support that specific state of fact. But so will it be different with Emmanuel Macron? It's going to be the same policy that François Hollande, and I don't think that things are going to change from what we see right now in terms of geopolitics. And Marine Le Pen, as she wants to get back to the French border, things may change. So it's still I lack of elements to clearly answer and not to enter into some conspiracy theories. And you need to be precise when you answer that kind of question. So
sure.
Don't go that much into details.
The thing about terrorism for me is ironically, I mean, what creates terrorism? War. And what does Trump want to do? He wants to, fight terrorism with war. So it's kind of going around in circles. Joseph, what do you think on that one?
I agree with Yann. I think that Macron's foreign policy will not be terribly different than Hollande's foreign policy. Marine Le Pen, I think, would be in a different position because she would need allies somewhere. She's not going to find them in the EU, since her position tends to be rather antagonistic towards the EU in many ways. She might find allies in Britain. She might find allies in the Five-Star movement in Italy, but that's kind of an inchoate movement, and they don't really have a lot of power. And she could look across the Atlantic for allies in both her domestic and potentially her foreign policy ventures. So I think both May, but maybe even more so Donald Trump in the White House might be more of a natural ally for Marine Le Pen's foreign policy. I mean, Marine Le Pen hasn't spoken a great deal about foreign policy. Her focus has been domestic. There are foreign policy ramifications, and you assume sort of a concert of ideas with some of the things that she said domestically. But I think she would look outside of the EU, both for support for her position with the EU and also for foreign policy. So you might find more of an agreement with some of the ideas in the American White House and Donald Trump.
Okay, guys. So once again, thank you very, very much for joining us, both Joseph and Yann and all our audience. There will be a recording of this live session put up fairly soon, I believe, on the FXStreet website. So if you want to go through any of this again for any of those points that you want to listen again. So I think our take on this is a higher euro momentarily on a Macron win and fireworks if Le Pen were to come through, and which would be a huge surprise. So we shall see. I believe the date is Sunday, European time in the evening. Those polls, the results will be coming through early, round about, well, I know it's 12 p.m. my time because I have to be here to recover that. So you can see all the action live on the FXStreet website, and we look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.
Thank you, Ross.
Cheers, Joseph. Thank you, Yann.
Yeah, thank you, Ross.
Bonsoir et bienvenue. Bonsoir Marine Le Pen.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir Emmanuel Macron.
Bonsoir.
Et bonsoir Christophe.
Candidat à l'élection présidentielle, parce que ça ne m'intéresse pas. Alors, vous allez continuer